Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum. I can't see all of your faces anymore, but I know there are a lot of familiar ones out there, and it's great to be here tonight for standing room only. Karl Fritsch, thank you for coming. I'm Alexandra Cunningham Cameron, and I'm a curator of contemporary design and Hint Secretarial Scholar here at Cooper Hewitt. And we're so pleased that you're here tonight to celebrate the second annual NYC Jewelry Week with our program, Karl Fritsch, Jewelry on the Edge. So Cooper Hewitt is proud to be the official museum sponsor of NYC Jewelry Week. It's the first and only local week dedicated to promoting and celebrating the world of jewelry design through innovative, education-focused programming, like what we have for you tonight. We're thrilled to welcome Wellington, New Zealand-based artist Karl Fritsch and renowned gallerist and owner of Salon 94, Jeanne Greenberg Rohaytn. Karl will first give a presentation on his work for about 20 minutes, and then following this, I'll moderate a talk with Jeanne and Karl. We certainly have a lot of ground to cover, but we want to make sure to leave some time at the end for some of your questions. So just before I get started, I'd like to formally introduce our guests this evening. Karl Fritsch began his education at the Goldsmith School in Pforzheim and studied at the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich. He has taught in art schools across the world, exhibited internationally, and his work has been acquired for public collections, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Stedelijk Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the National Gallery Victoria Museum, New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa. He's running a practice that's focused on the ring, as most of you all know. Fritsch explores taste, aesthetics, and desire as he manipulates perceived ideas of preciousness and convention. The highly covetable rings have seen him win numerous awards and become a cult figure in contemporary jewelry. He also works collaboratively with a range of artists, including artist Francis Upprichard and furniture designer Martino Gamper. In 2006, Karl received the highly prestigious international Françoise van den Bosch Award. Jeanne Greenberg Rohaytn is a gallerist, art advisor, and curator, a fierce activist. She's committed to feminist and progressive politics, in keeping with her belief in art's power to bring about social change. Greenberg Rohaytn founded her first gallery space in 2002, later adding venues on the Bowery in 2007 and 2010. Salon 94 is a unique project space in her home on 94th Street that explores the notion of traditional white box gallery. Many of you have probably seen Karl's show up that opened last night. Next year, she will consolidate her galleries to the former National Academy of Design on 3 East 89th Street, just a couple of blocks away. She has championed artists such as Huma Baba, Judy Chicago, Katie Grannon, David Hammonds, Lyle Ashton Harris, Marilyn Minter, Laurie Simmons, and Betty Woodman, among many others. Karl Fritsch's rings have been featured in her program since 2007. Greenberg Rohaytn is radical in breaking hierarchies between design and high art. In 2017, she founded Salon 94 Design to represent Max Lamb, Philippe Malouin, who was a 2018 Wallpaper Designer of the Year, and Gaetano Pesce. Greenberg Rohaytn sits on the boards of White Columns and Performa. She's a member of the ADAA board and has served on the Frieze Art Fair Committee. So without further ado, I would love for you all to give a warm welcome to Karl Fritsch.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I've got 20 minutes. So fasten your seatbelts. I'm going to run you through my ring life. Here we go. Okay, that's where I grown up. This is a place called Sonthofen. It's in the Allgäuer Alps on the border to Austria. There's lots of rain there. The clouds get stuck in the mountains. Long winters. I grew up on skis. there's this beautiful Allgäu brown field there, because there's lots of grass. And when I was bored at school, I started scratching with a screwdriver those little figures. They're like an inch tall, and I had a screwdriver and some kind of soapstone. And that was what actually got me interested after 13 years finishing high school to do something with my hands. And the idea was, the tradition in that area was wood carving. You know, those Jesuses and crosses, that kind of style. But maybe luckily I missed the deadline, being 17, 18. And when my mother went to a watchmaker, she met a woman there, and she said, oh, her son is studying watchmaking at a jewelry and watchmaking school in Pforzheim. So she met that woman, and she told her son is at that watchmaking and jewelry school, and she suggested that to me. I thought, yeah, well, I'll try. So I went there to this Goldschmiedeschule in Pforzheim. You get a 3-year apprenticeship there. And it was actually love on the first sight. I got in right away, and I loved everything about it. The tools, we were busy. Like for 1 month, you do only file bits of brass. Very boring. Interesting enough, those pieces. This is kind of how you learn jewelry. And those pieces, I think that they're a special genre of jewelry. They are designed and made to be measured. You know, you make them, and then the teacher goes and measures if you did it exactly the right size as the drawing. So that's how it all started. Then at that school, you learn a wide range of techniques. Like this is all stone setting. You know, digging up those metal surfaces properly, setting those stones in, and extensively learning this. After 2 years at that school, you have a very good background in techniques. And then to finish off this apprenticeship, you had to go finish it off in a company. And I went to a small silver jewelry producing company in Pforzheim. The interesting bit was that learning that jewelry in commercial, conventional jewelry is just like produced like any mass-produced object, like a card. You know, the jewelers sit there. One gets like a bag, and he only cuts off the sprue. The next one just sands it. The next one polishes it. And so I went through all these stages of production, and also through the model-making department, which is, where the designs are made. But designing there meant the boss comes like once a month, puts a magazine in front of you and said, make something like this, just a little bit smaller. So anyway, there were some things I made there, but I knew this is not how I want to make jewelry. So, relating back to the cow you see in the first image, this is a little cow udder on a pin. So that was after this apprenticeship. I went back to my hometown, and I just started doing things I felt like doing. So this udder is like a little container. You can open it up. And I was just making things I saw around me, like this little strawberry. It's like an inch tall, and it's not any strawberry. It's one strawberry from the garden. I just exactly copied that strawberry. It's identical to the real one, almost. Same thing, it opens up and you can put something in it. And I was just chasing away those fruits and vegetables. And, where do I go with that? And I heard about the jewelry class at the Academy of Fine Art in Munich. They had a jewelry and hollowware department. So I went there with my sheets of vegetables and showed it to the professor. Hermann Junger was a professor there. For the jewelers, you will know, he's a very important figure for just the contemporary jewelry world. His work mostly comes from interpreting drawings in a very free way and just keeping it all alive in metal then. So Hermann looked at it and said, yeah, okay. I mean, I think it was just strange enough for him to get me in. then I was in that academy, and being a mountain boy, and then there's all about art and what's jewelry, what's art, what's contemporary jewelry, what's the problem. A lot of confusion, thinking about things, and chaos theories. You could visit all classes there. It's very open. You study there for a minimum of 5 years, so you're really given time to find your language. So it didn't take long to get me in trouble. I made these works almost a year in, and I called them Verschandler, which is like disguster. There was lots of beautiful gold work done, and I, in the sense of, jewelry is a medium to attract attention. I thought, something ugly might actually work better to attract attention than something beautiful. And it took me quite a while to make something like this. But it got into a quite heated discussion, and Herman he probably didn't more like the attitude about it than the actual piece. But anyway, I thought I need to take a break. I need to see other places. I need to see the world. And I came to New York, and 30 years ago for the first time. I was lucky. I found a jeweler, Mario Salvucci. He unfortunately died not too long ago. And this was the view for where I was living, between B and C on 8th Street. It was quite, some friends, when I said them come over, they said, oh no, I don't want to be killed. And look where I'm now. But, walking around, immediately I got to understand, pop art, where it came from, this refrigeration business on Bowery. I'm not sure if it's still there. But I had my go at like pop art jewelry, like a highway on a chopstick, on a potato sandwich brooch. They're like as big as a hand, or potato on a chopstick, on a gun sandwich brooch. So they're painted metal. Back home, and this is the Hermitage in Bayreuth, the King's Castle, and I just the use of stones, colored stones, the whole building covered with stones. A mosaic in the Milano train station, out of little stones. I especially like the spiky hair on the guy's leg. Or this is a 12th century Venetian necklace. These little buildings are all put together out of tiny little micro mosaics. So I had my go at stones again, learning properly stone setting. Then it was kind of that mosaic style gave me, the idea, I could just, cover surfaces. So I found like those crystals, polished little crystals, and created pieces. Some first rings like that, or it allowed me, those colored stones and repoussé allowed me to go quite decorative. This is probably the most decorative ones I did. But there's like, emeralds on top of this bulb, and a mix of agates and carnelian. And then I thought, very clever, just, give the people a permanent marker and they can design it themselves. I'm not sure if this wasn't too successful. But then reducing those shapes, and this is still academy time, this is the first pieces I used casting again, a technique I learned in industry to just multiply things. So this is, in this time, just used as one of a kind and leaving the, like air bubbles, or leaving things from casting on and not trying to refinish it. And a very key moment in my whole making is that ring. Because to cast the ring before, the best way, the cheapest way to get metal was going to the pawn shop and buy old jewelry. So that's what I usually did, and then melt it down, and in just one moment, having just this work in front of me, I started fixing them. So, you know, when the pawnbroker took the stone up, because that has resale value, yeah, you know, I filled the gap again with a gold filling, or, you know, rings like this. It's been classic, conventional jewelry, but it's been rejected. Somebody needed the money or whatever, sold it away, and it allowed me to have my input, my manipulation on it. And I felt very comfortable with it because, you know, this is pieces, that kind of jewelry I learned making in Pforzheim. This is the jewelry I grew up with. My aunties, my mother would wear. And I could just now, gave me a way to turn them into something completely different. Or, you know, fixing the ring shank, giving them a whole new character. Like the ring offered its new design itself, you know, I just had to help the ring to become a new one. And it almost felt like a jewelry psychiatrist, you know, having those rejects from, you know, they've been rejects, and I bring them into this jewelry life on a very different level again. I've always been interested in the processes that are involved in the making. You know, this also cast 14 karat gold cast onto 18 karat gold. And just what gold does through the casting process, it gets oxidized. It's all brown. And I like the look. It's the real thing, you know. Gold does that itself. It's not I'm adding this to it. That's how it looks like. And I just like showing that as well. And when you wear it, it polishes itself, so the metal quality will, you know, show itself. Always, you know, with art thing, and there's always wondering where this kind of comes from. And then it's actually not too long ago in my auntie's garden, I realized, you know, I saw this rail that they built. So, you know, my aunties, they want to have a rail for their chairs. They just find what they have and just, you know, stick it together. That's it. It's immediate. It looks like, because that's what they wanted. And it's just, I think, you know, seeing this, then making the jewelry, it's it took me a long time to realize, you know, that actually how much those things that I've seen growing up influenced me. This very happy woman is a car registration officer in South Australia, in Perth. I was very happy to have a photo taken. I just came to me that, you know, you go around on the other side of the world. This was still living in Germany, but conventional jewelry just looks the same wherever you go. It's quite shocking. It's actually quite interesting. There is a great video or interview with a Japanese architect up here, Hiroshi Sambuichi, who he says that in architecture as well, that, you know, how modern architecture all over the world kind of starts looking the same, and it's not adapting to actually local weather and conditions. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. You know, same thing. That's how conventional jewelry looks like and keeps looking like. But you know, and just had more goes at that things. You know, these are brooches like my aunties would wear, and I found broken ones and just replaced some balls, cast some gold where the pearls are missing. It's kind of fixing, repairing them. These are not, you know, they've been fashion, brass, cheap things, but they meant something to people. I was even making cufflinks and tie pins back then. A brooch, that was one thing at the academy. With studying with Hermann Jünger, you almost had to gain a brooch license. Like when people were making a brooch, you had to look, and Only if he said, you know, that's good enough, you were allowed to put a pin in the back. And the pin had to be, you know, really, you've got to find out the right solution. So these brooches were designed, I got the pin first, and kind of the pin designed what's coming out in the brooch. Double loop, yeah, just what the pin bags, these are just conventional hobby shop pin bags, what they offered me. One of the first pieces casting just stones, rubies into place. You know, industry does cast stones into place as well. This is not something new, it's just they do it a bit more properly than me. I like the moment of things getting out of control. So, you know, when those classic rings just develop their own life. Or from the process, what's sticking out where the diamonds are set in is actually the sprue where this ring is cast. So just celebrating something that's actually just a technical piece. This is, yeah, kind of the Fritsch pavé and my lazy pavé, which I think got very popular. It's stone setting is another thing. I learned stone setting, you know, intensely at school, and it's hard, it's labor intense, and it took me a long time. It took me 10 years to come back to it, free enough to use it in my own way, you know, how to apply it so that it's mine. It became my technique. Before it was something I learned. It's by instruction, but this I owned it then. Sorry, some slides are not that great, but this is just, you know, a whole diamond extra finger. This is just it's a piece about wasting time. It's passing time. This when my son Max was born. When he was a baby, he wasn't a good sleeper, so you'd like to be carried around. And as soon as you sit down and don't move, he start to cry. And so I took him to the workshop, and when he was around my front, and I could set, when I was setting stones, there was enough movement that he could go to sleep. So I just had that sheet, I just filled that sheet of silver full of all little rubies, sapphires, emeralds that I had, and so, you know, to keep him asleep. Denise has another ring of that series. I couldn't do that again. That's the little teddy bear toy from my aunties. They just keep fixing, the dog's pulling it apart and they keep fixing it. But, you know, they wouldn't really like my rings, but, you know, they're doing the same thing. I think it was 97, I was invited as a jeweler, artist in residence kind of to Erfurt, a town in the former East, sitting in the valley, and I had to come up with a project, and I said, well, I wasn't quite sure what I'm doing, so I said, okay, I'm going to look for gold, metaphorical, but actually in the local Natural History Museum, there was a book about gold prospecting in the medieval times, and there were maps in the books, and I tried to find those places in the maps again, and got myself some equipment and started digging there and washing for, you know, hours and days and weeks. And this is an example of a piece of a trophy that one of the emperors of that area had made of his own gold, but it took, I think, 50 workers a year to find enough gold. So even back then, there wasn't that much gold. But that's the piece of gold I found. And you know, I was as happy. I was incredible because it's a real great experience for every jeweler. Go out and go gold prospecting, because it makes you aware how special that material actually is. Because if there's gold there, you'll see. Very conceptual piece. The pin is out of white gold, and you know, white gold is the most refined from furthest away from nature possible from gold, but you know, the pin is much more valued. as material value than my little gold nugget, but my little gold nugget is everything to me. You know, jewelry, another use of a safety pin. How, you know, can a safety pin can be a piece of jewelry? What happens, what the context does to a piece of jewelry, how a piece of jewelry become a whole symbol for a whole culture. Jewelry is an applied art, you know, it's when the person and the jewelry come together. It's amazing. Yeah, this is just not celebrating as much craftsmanship and, you know, as the pieces before. That's like my version of the gold, you know, must have had enough being shaped over centuries. So it's just like 300 grams of fine gold running down Alex's chest. One of my first solo shows is, it was 96 or something. I just put all my rings in one showcase, like it's the cutout, like almost like of a piece of meadow. That's my first museum exhibition. I thought, wow, now, you know, I've made it. This is the new museum in Nuremberg, you know, as a jeweler to make it into the holy halls. And then this was the opening. That's all the people that were there. and I know all of them. So, yeah, here we go. That's another yeah, museum show of when that Francois van den Bosch prize in the State of the Museum in Van den Bosch. There were a few more people, but always it comes down to the individuals you reach, you meet, you make contact. This guy Andy Lim, he's a book publisher. I published the books with him, and he got a real fan. He didn't know this jewelry exists. He got a real fan of it and published a huge compendium. Some of you might in here probably involved and seen it. And this is the book printer. You know, he got a ring for his partner. And Mitsu is a bow maker because Andy Lim collects violin bows. So, and you meet those specialists, and those specialists, they could actually totally connect to this world. And that's been always amazing to, yeah, get people, new people involved. Yeah, this is some of the mad book Andy publishes. This is a book of 4,000 drawings of an artist friend of ours. And then, you know, he asked me to make a handle that is totally not usable. But, you know, this is still, I was still, after my studies, making stuff. I mean, 25 years ago, you know, without friends like my friend Mook, who was an architect, who had a, you know, stable job, who, when money was needed, he would buy something, or Lore, a good friend who's really one person who's just not shy in wearing something extravagant and just having, you know, enjoying this. So those been really beautiful, important people. Once I sent some stones to get holes cut through, and because I needed the stones with the holes, and the stone cutter sent me back all the cores that he drilled out. I didn't expect them. So actually all the precious stones sticking out have been the leftovers, but actually that was the most exciting bit of the whole project. You've seen those piles of stones, letting the stone just build its own shape, and, you know, not using stones just as a decoration point on a piece of jewelry. I get pushed for 5 minutes. I race through. I'll flick quickly. It's like 1 carat of diamonds stuck on a wedding ring. Those rings, this interesting diamond company, Hilton, from South Africa, he saw those rings and he wanted to design a new contemporary line with diamonds. And he, you know, he's producing Tiffany diamonds. It's like, yeah, sure, you know, things are never could put my hand on before. And we designed a group of work that was presented in Comme des Garçons stores in Tokyo, I think also in New York. That was, you know, I love solitaire rings. That was one one of those solitaire rings. You know, this is the same thing, a diamond ring. I like coming back to those classics in jewelry. You know, everybody, if I say solitaire ring, you have a picture, but I'd like to offer a new version today, how can it look today? Another part of my practice is now and then I do workshops, teach workshops, which is actually quite helpful because usually I'm in my studio just making stuff and I don't have to explain things to myself or talk to myself. So this is actually quite helpful sometimes that I, you know, find words for what I actually do. This was, when Jeanne, entered with Francis, the rings entered your world. So this is a sculpture from Francis, Hugh Pritchard, a sloth, and that sloth is wearing my jewelry. And it's very, sorry, its image not that great, but this is how, our worlds connected. And Jeanne obviously discovered those rings. And it's funny, the sloth has been, there's another sloth who went through, been sold and through another auction, and every time it comes up, it has less rings on. I like those collaborations with Francis Hugh Pritchard. This is just, That's a long time ago in my workshop, but it always looks kind of similar. It's full of things. I never come to an empty workshop. There's lots of things just waiting to be made and to be finished and to be taken on. So I started this process a long time ago, and it just keeps me, you know, there's always something. Sometimes it's quick, like this, you know, it's spontaneous. I like working with wax. I sometimes can be quick, and I know, oh, this is good. That's finished and ready to cast. Sometimes things sit there for years. I have some waxes sitting 15, 20 years there and waiting to be a piece. Ruby rings. I see no more time sign coming up. Oh, you know, sometimes, you know, ruby rings, some too simple one is quite, we come back to most convincing. This is a kind of raw ruby, dancing ruby. Raw diamond. I'd like same thing, raw diamond. You know, diamond, everybody knows diamond, but, you know, it's the raw form is, if you see it, you'll get that it's a special thing. Solitaire rings, you know, real solitaire. This is just a rock. This is, quite conceptual. The most precious bit about, that's a diamond with holes. It wasn't easy to find somebody to put that hole in that diamond. And it's not cheap either. So actually, you know, the most expensive bit is the bit that's missing. You can just take that for a wonder. Solitaire ring, you know, how do you set a stone? That's quite obvious. And, you know, as a jeweler, it's nice. Sometimes I get images like that sent in an email. You know, you're not an undertaker or a dentist. Usually people are usually happy. That was, Daniel gave his partner that as an engagement ring after 20 years. And so, you know, it's really nice. It's a nice relationships you form. It's me. Even the sheep are bejeweled in New Zealand, where I live since 10 years now. Oh, back to the cow. I still like, this part of making jewelry as a jeweler. People come and everybody has like jewelry inherited. And once a woman came to me, gave me all her old rings and said, oh, can you turn this into something, a new ring? And, I just took it all out and piled it all in there. Oh, this is from a ring from a series called Seven Deadly Sins. This was greed. And this was Eitelkeit. I know it's funny. I used to, for a long time, try to get rings into places, and then sometimes the rings take actually me to places, and sometimes you get they make up those funny invite. I just saw a weird invite. But this is actually one person with she owns all those rings. This is so nice. This is probably the heaviest ring I've made. It's like 2 kilo on my finger. Yeah, diamond rings. I've had a go at some signet rings lately. I hope you're all right. I made a series of rings abusing my colleagues. This is Otto Stoff. He was my professor also. And Rothman Sachs. At an opening at his house. I could sell that 3 times. I couldn't. It's just one presentation where like all rings sitting on that eel skeleton. Ich weiß es nicht. That's I don't know in German. And that's my auntie, Annie. Thank you.
Thank you, Karl. I'm so grateful to be on the stage with 2 people I admire so much. And hearing you walk through...
I meant to put the next thing on.
The narrative of your life and work has been incredible.
Sorry.
I wanted to read a quote to you, your own quote, I hope you don't mind, which was included in the retrospective at Cheer Gallery. The ring is desperate, desperate to find a finger, desperate to tell you, I love you, I'm beautiful, I'm rich, I'm cool, I hate you, I come from Ireland or Austria, I want more, I have enough, I'm married, I'm funny, I'm scary, stupid, important, I can't help you, I am. When and why did you start focusing on rings?
A pretty long time ago, but it just naturally evolved. There was not, I couldn't pin, it wasn't a decision I made, now I make rings. It just evolved into that being my favorite medium and favorite volume to work with, and also just trying it on. I've been wearing them all, so I like that fact, and you can tell much better if a ring's good than if earrings are good.
So we always say that you make rings for the wearer, and in fact, when we wear our jewelry, the only jewelry we can actually see is the rings on our fingers, and that's something very special that you. When you wear earrings, you wear them usually for the enjoyment of others, and it's a kind of gift to other people. And when you put on a necklace, it gives you a certain kind of carriage. But a ring is this wonderful, intimate experience that you have all the time, and so it's kind of a gift. And in fact, most of the rings do come in Karl's size. So
I've noticed that some larger
they're really
rings.
big, and we're really grateful that that Karl also has collaborations with other jewelers, and we have a jeweler in New York who comes and fits them.
Yeah, but the rings come in Karl's size in more than just a literal size, also because the rings are telling your story, and they're in a way expressing your pleasure, your pain, fantasy, and so they're also for you.
Yeah, sure, you don't want to know all of it. No, but I mean, you know, I can pick some and can identify, but they, you know, I speak in rings. That's me. What's on the table there, but I don't want. You don't have to know. It's open. It's meant. You know, you can interpret it your way. I don't have to unload my, you know, my life onto you.
There was something that happened last night that was pretty interesting that tells two stories. One was your story. A collector came in to choose a ring for his wife, who he had been in a very big fight with. And he went down the line, and I said, oh, pick something beautiful for her. And instead, he chose the ring with all the screws, and you know, it was really the most violent ring there. And I said, you clearly don't want to make up with your wife. And Karl looked at it and said, oh, I made that ring when I was building my studio, and you could feel all the work of your studio in that one ring, the frustration and all the tools that it takes and the time. And so off he went with that ring to make up with his wife. And so I love how the rings do tell these stories, that we make them our own as well.
Yeah, and you were also saying, Jeanne, that the ring transforms a wearer.
Oh, absolutely. It you know, it bewitches us in a certain way. And also, each ring really does find their own person. And that's why I always really encourage people to pick them up and try them on and see what suits them. Because different, and also what suits you changes through time as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's
you know.
also, I like the term applied art, you know. I think that's what it is. It's not a minor thing. It's when the thing is applied, it's actually its final destination, and that's when it proves how good it is. And these are great moments when they happen. And I think it's a very good prescription of what I do.
Yeah, in fact, you know, on a personal level, one of the rings that you showed was that raw diamond ring, which I actually asked you to make me a raw diamond ring, because all of a sudden I started to look at my own wedding ring years later, and I was uncomfortable wearing it. And I thought, why am I still wearing this with this, you know, emerald cut diamond? You know, it doesn't feel like me anymore. And the minute I put on the raw diamond to kind of counterbalance my other one, it kind of became alive again. And so you know, that I was really grateful for, and so I still wear now a different raw diamond from you every day, because that one's too big. Too heavy.
But that sense of connection with the wearer, I think, is quite important. You know, you are putting a very specific story in each unique ring, and when people are approaching your work, in a way they're reading what you're putting into it, but also, you know, in a way projecting their own desires and fantasies and interests and curiosity onto this particular object. But you are also very connected to your work. I have one of your rings, which is the KF, Karl's initials, and he did not know before a couple of days ago that I had this ring, and I've never seen such pleasure on someone's face to be reunited with his ring, which he never thought he was going to see again.
I'd never think anybody would buy my initials as a ring.
Yeah, but it's a perfect example.
But I had to make it, you know, it's a thing. It's something I had to make.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's great that, I mean, this almost felt unsellable for me, but here we go.
It's so fitting that
Yeah.
that a curator.
I know, super
should be,
fan,
you know,
clearly.
But should be. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's why the rings find the right finger.
Yeah.
And the right person.
Yeah.
So.
And so many people also, see what they want to see in the ring. In this one in particular, it's initials, but it's an abstraction in most cases to people. And they don't see your initials, and those hidden values are so integral to your work, right? Because you're playing with ideas of beauty and of value. And do you think that's a responsibility of a jeweler or of jewelry to critique society today?
I wouldn't make it a rule. If you feel like it, yes, absolutely, you should. I think it's important, but I wouldn't, It's also all right if jewelry is just beautiful. There's a reason for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you try and make everything ugly as well. So it's
No,
and that's
I
what makes
changed.
you an artist.
Yeah. Well, sure. I've got a challenge. I mean, it is. As I say, I want to make it my. What can I say? It's got to be my thing to say. That's why you're looking for this new space. Or what can you say? Or what do I have to add to everything that's out there?
Well, in fact, when I look at the signature ring, I think, Calder for many years, that's what he did. He made all of his friends' signatures. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you don't make rings for other people necessarily. You make them for yourself first.
I do a lot for myself.
You started to talk a little bit about your influences and where you source materials in unorthodox places. And I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about your process, how much is planned out, how much of it is intuitive, how much your local environment influences you.
Yeah, I think I thought I did that. No, I mean it's an open range. I work very intuitively, but sometimes, as my brain, I have ideas too, and then I process ideas. But I think the most honest, truthful things are when the things are just in front of me, and I start making. That's when things happen. Then thinking kicks in, and but that's where I'm most comfortable.
When
stuff
there are
happens
no
in front of
expectations.
me.
Yeah.
But it can go anywhere, But this is, I need that. That's what I need. I'm. Sometimes I go to the workshop with an idea, but it's, that's all right. But the comfortable areas is just me and the work in front of me, and we go from there, and wherever it takes me.
So we've collaborated on many shows together now, and one of the great ways that we work together is in the presentation and in the actual display. And what you're seeing here, a few of them are some of our displays.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about the plasticine and how you came to some of the kind of tricks of showing your jewelry, your rings.
Yeah, it's things that also come kind of naturally close. Sometimes, I use plasticines. The first time use plasticine was just for when you do casting, you make your little base out of plasticine, stick your wax in. And you stick your wax ring in it, and it's just like, it's mounted there. And that's how it then, at one stage, it's ended up, I could use that for presentation. And it's so practical because you can just stand up your rings, and, it's so modular. modular. Anyway, so it has been growing, and I don't lose interest in it. It just keeps. I can just always take it further and reinvent it in every space. Adapt it like we did with you, or with with the paper. It's just it's nice to find simple solutions because you have. The jewelry is usually very small. It's rings. So in an I had experience in art galleries where I showed work. Then people start standing 3 meters away with a glass of wine, looking at a wall where there's like objects like this. So that's a great thing with Jeanne, because you close, you have this, and this intimate relationship that you are close to the jewelry, and it's I like to transport it that you can come close to it and get near it, and that's an important thing, that intimacy of jewelry.
Well, you have to touch it. You have to touch it. I remember actually the first time I visited a jeweler, and they poured into my hand from a little envelope of, they took out their envelope and they poured in my hand the diamonds, and they said you have to pick them up and feel them, and it was so physical, and your work is so physical. When you pick them up, your fingerprints are in them, and that's something that when people do work with me, I kind of insist upon. And so when I see a visitor kind of looking far away, I say, pick it up. I pick one up, put it into their hands. It's really important, and it's an important interaction. And we don't get that so much in art. We do, though, in sculpture and in bronzes, and that's, my practice comes out of showing art. And one of the things that I've always done in my practice is I've always taken pedestals off. I hate things in vitrines. I try and bring works as close as possible to the viewer, and kind of this sense of preciousness or this distance, we really do try and break that.
Yeah. And do you notice a different audience for Karl's work in comparison to when you have an art exhibition?
Well, now we've been showing together for over the years, so Karl has all kinds of followers. Certainly this room is amazing. Many of whom I probably don't know, and you come out of the jewelry world. Mostly people who I work with come out of the art world, and so they come to me for art, and then they discover something else, and so that's part of my practice, is to show other disciplines that I believe and practices that are also in the category of art for myself.
Right. And NYC Jewelry Week, it was designed with the intention of trying to broaden the audience for jewelry, and also to create connections in between different areas of jewelry. And Karl, you're showing your work all over the world and traveling. Do you notice that there is a shifting in understanding or appreciation for the type of work you're making?
I think I'm lucky with having these opportunities to come meet Jeanne, and there is definitely a different audience from the jewelry gallery audience. I know, and these are great moments to see that people can engage, and how they're surprised, they're amazing surprise because they haven't known this existed, and how they just can actually adapt it. And these are great moments, and I don't too often witness them, because I'm not usually, most of the time, not there when the rings are handed over. But it's this is great too. It's wonderful to see, and to see when I meet them again.
Basically, you're killing all conventional jewelry when somebody starts putting on your rings. It's really true. I think we've had a lot of people who came in wearing one kind of jewelry and go out wearing yours, and they never stop. And that's why you have women sending you pictures, and men too, with their hands completely covered in your rings over the years. But we have people who come and kind of take a pilgrimage to pick out their new Karl Fritsch ring. Beautiful.
Well, we have an audience here, maybe of some people who are discovering Karl's work for the first time, and definitely some old friends. But we would love to open up to questions if anyone has something to ask Karl. Kara's going to pass around a mic. Please raise your hand. Yes.
Hi. You said that you usually work with just like the material in front of you and go from there. But
Yeah.
how do you work when you collaborate? Like, how does that process go?
There's different ways. Sometimes with Francis Ubrichen and Martino Gampa, we just all bring our stuff, and then we'll when we make an exhibition, we put things in a room. and the very nice thing is, Martino coming from the design world, Francis coming from the art world, and I'm, you can say, craft world. But it's totally even value for us. There's no, it's such a fun play. It's just fantastic. But also sometimes we work together. We had residencies, all three of us together, and because we all like making, and we all pretty much start the same thing. We find material and then make stuff together, and it happened, materials mixed in each other's work, and these are really wonderful collaborations, as one example of them.
The scenographies that you create for your work are so particularly special and evocative, and I think are one of the ways that people feel as though they can approach your work. Have you ever thought about scaling up and playing around with design, furniture, lighting, architecture?
Oh yeah, totally. Well, I that DIY, my auntie's DIY mentality. When I need a chair for the barbecue tonight at home in New Zealand, I make it up. But it's not meant to be. I make it for myself, and I'll do things because I like making anything. I would love to build a house. Just so far, it's just been renovating, but I'd love to.
I'd love to see those barbecue chairs.
But what's that?
I'd love to see those barbecue chairs. So Jeanne.
Hi, thank you very much. So in your work, you work with both like precious stones such as rubies and sapphires, but also synthetic stones such as cubic zirconia. Which ones are your favorite, the synthetic or the precious stones?
There's no favorite. I mean, I think that's important for me, that there's like no favorites. I pick up pebbles from the beach. I buy diamonds. They come from all different ranges, from all different places, but there's no hierarchy in it. I mean, the stone's right. It's my favorite when it fits the thing. When the ring's good, then that's the one. But it's not. It's very democratic, those materials, and I just favor them by intuitive approach.
How frequently do you destroy an in-process ring and start from scratch?
Oh, I once did that, and I hated that I did it. So there's boxes with there's lots of things sitting there, and now I think I really only once did it, and now
Wow.
I'm very annoyed at myself
You
that
regret
I
it.
did it. Because it's nice if you can. The great thing, it's small. You don't have so much storage problems, and it's true. Even when you travel a show, it's very
They come in
convenient.
little boxes in the mail sometimes.
But then often, as I say with the waxes, you know, some things I make quick, I know they're good, but sometimes I don't know right away, and I can't read them yet, and sometimes they take time for me to understand what I actually did at that moment, and this can take a long time. Because
So,
there's something I did it.
right. So sometimes you'll put a work away and wait and then bring it out again.
They can be
Yeah.
away for a long, long time.
Yeah.
There's some haven't made it out of the drawer for many years.
When I saw the piece that you showed with the metal plate, and all these like little stones, right? When you were,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
with the young child, I realized how much your work is similar to Lisa Walker's work and her way of, like, it was just really touching to me, like the way she responds in her art. And it was like, oh my God, they're exactly the same, but in different. Could you tell a little bit about the artistic relationship and influences between the two of you as artists, as partners, and maybe some, I don't know, how does it work? Is it dialogue?
Very well. It works well. It works really good. No, I think that's pretty amazing. We're very lucky that we actually so, in a way, close, but in a way also so far apart in how our work looks. It's very different forms it finds, and it's sometimes we laugh at when things cross over. There might appear some praying hands, or at some stage here, and but did you do that? No, I did that. These things happen quite naturally, or if you have the same children, you're exposed to them. So no, it's a very good, but we keep it very separate. We don't work in one room together. The biggest insulation actually is between our two studios. Just not to disturb each other. We go to work separately, and we don't often, sometimes only just last month Lisa had a show in London, and then I had a show in Munich, and we sometimes haven't seen each other's works until we go to each other's shows. So it's like, oh, I didn't see it. Oh, when did you make that?
I'm just very curious. What does your packaging look like?
Packaging for
question.
jewelry.
Yeah.
Oh, you go at Salon. There's, I
Yes,
got.
we
We
now
made some
have-
up.
It's really good.
But I'm sure
promise.
everyone wants to wear the rings out.
Yes, people never take the boxes. In fact, I noticed we still have a big stack of boxes, and we made beautiful boxes.
Yeah,
Sister
packaging
made 'em.
not needed.
Yeah.
No,
Straight
usually
onto the
I'm not.
finger and out the door
Usually
when
it's
they're
not my.
shipped.
I mean, packaging when I ship rings. Yes, I put lots of tissue paper and big boxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Fair
curious
enough.
to know how many people here have a piece of Karl Fritsch jewelry and are wearing it tonight. Okay, so everyone look at each other's fingers as you mingle after the talk. Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thank you, Karl.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeanne.